Alright guys, this is going to be the part of the Chapter 15 Lesson 1 and 2, the Industrial North. This starts your worksheet 3 over the Industrial Revolution, Technology and Industry. So we're just going to cover numbers 1 through 12, Lesson 1, Technology and Industry. First thing that we're going to cover is how there were 3 phases on industrialization of America. The first phase includes the employers dividing jobs into smaller steps. Each worker specialized in one step. This is a pre-early assembly line, so this is more like Eli Whitney's policy where each worker only put a certain part of the product together, and then they would send the whole basket of goods to somebody else to assemble the next set of jobs. Phase 2 involves entrepreneurs. Entrepreneurs are people who build factories from an idea, and they bring specialized workers together under one roof. This allowed the product to move quickly from one worker to another. This is your Francis Cabot Lowell phase, where it's early factories where you had to be next to a river source. And phase 3 of industrialization is workers used machines to complete the tasks. This is really where steam engines come involved, and these steam engines allow factories to not necessarily have to be near rivers anymore. They just need the steam power, where you had a source of either coal or wood to burn the steam in these engines. These workers use the machines. The machines do all of the work and all of the creation of the product. You just have to stand at the machine and make sure it doesn't get stuck or clogged up. All right, so we're going to talk about one of these entrepreneurs and how they developed the sewing machine. The sewing machine was developed in the 1840s by 2 men, Elias Howe and Isaac Singer. Y'all might have seen one of these maybe in an antique shop or in a picture a long time ago. And it was pedal powered, so you would have a pedal at your feet and you would press down the pedal. Early versions, you actually had to crank this on the side for it to run the thread through here, and you would have a needle attached here and it would sew the clothing. So this allowed clothing to be mass produced from fabrics made by machines. So at first it was textile mills that actually made the cloth, bolts of cloth, but now we're going to have people, entrepreneurs buying these machines, and they're going to set up factories to mass produce clothing. And so it makes it cheaper and faster for their clothing to be developed. The steamboat was important because it made the transportation of goods and people cheaper and faster in the way of traveling. It cut the cost of transporting goods from hundreds of dollars to just a couple of either $10 to $20 per ton, in fact. And it brought in a new era of river transportation where two-way river travel was possible. All right, now let's talk about ocean travel. There's river travel with the steamboat, but ocean travel was still more difficult, so the steam engine on ships is not going to be developed for a couple more decades. But the biggest technology to happen for America happens to be a clipper ship or sailing ships. Of course, they've had these sails on them for decades, but what's different about this ship is if you were to turn it upside down, this ship would be at a point starting here in the front of the bow, and it would be at a point all the way across the bottom to across the top. It's no longer just rounded, but it actually has a point to it that makes it to where it can clip or cut through the ocean waves faster. It makes ocean travel faster to the point where you could travel over 300 miles per day. So instead of it taking you 4 to 8 weeks to get from America to England and England to America and back one way, 4 to 8 weeks, now it's going to take less than 3 weeks for that same travel, and later on in the future it'll get down to less than 6 days with steam engines put on there. So the clipper ship, as you can see from this point, If you were to pick it up, it would have a point underneath there. Railroad and canals. This is about your canal travel on number 5. What was the major benefit of the Erie Canal and other canals? It caused the growth in the 1940s and the 50s that connected places that were far apart. The canals made shipping goods, the prices of goods, shipping goods dropped. Because the price of shipping your goods dropped, it actually causes the price of the good itself to drop also. So as a result, not only do the owners of businesses benefit, but so do the consumers, because they're going to pay less for the same products that used to cost them a lot more. So also, it'll encourage the growth of new larger cities in the Midwest because of these canals are connected to major rivers. And then later on, when railroads are developed, people are going to move Midwest and you're going to have larger cities like St. Louis and Chicago are going to turn into major centers in the Midwest. So this is your part of number 7. How did railways and waterways transform manufacturing and trade within the Midwestern region of the U.S.? It's going to make the prices of goods drop because the price of shipping goods will also drop. Also, larger cities are going to develop in the Midwest because of the railroads. It makes it faster and cheaper for you to transport goods. It'll encourage people to move out west because they'll have a faster way to travel back to the East Coast. As you can see here, all of the railroads by the 1850s. The Transcontinental Railroad will be built in 1869 after the Civil War. So in 1860, as you can see, this is all the railroads. Trains clipped along at 20 to 30 miles per hour by 1860. In 1833, the 136-mile Charleston and Hamburg line was the longest railroad in the world. Americans loved their railroads in spite of the irregular schedules, frequent breakdowns, and being showered with sparks from their locomotives. The biggest outcome that came from this, just a little FYI, that daylight savings time where you have the further west you go, the time travel occurs. Like the Midwest, we're an hour behind the East Coast. All the way to California is 3 hours behind the East Coast. That is because of railroad travel, so that there's not that big of a discrepancy with communications. All right, so number 8, how do railroads change settlements in the U.S.? It'll encourage the growth of new large cities. People are going to move westward. It opened up settlements in the West that people normally would not have settled in a certain area because they needed rivers to travel. Now you don't need a river to travel, you just hop on the nearest train. The Transcontinental Railroad will not develop until 1869. However, and this happens to be number 9 on your paper, I'm going to go through as I'm talking to you. I see that the Transcontinental Railroad is on here. It does not look like it's on here. So just listen very carefully as I explain what's going on here. The Transcontinental Railroad will go all the way over to San Francisco by 1869. It'll connect 2 large major railroad companies. The transcontinental means across the continent, and what it did is it opened up the West to settlement. It'll drop the price of goods completely, and it will make America a global market. Not only will they get goods from Europe, but now, because San Francisco is now connected to a railroad, America will become an Asian market also. So it became a global market and became actually the #1 manufacturing and importer of goods in the world by the turn of the 20th century of 1900. So that's the impact the Transcontinental Railroad will have in America. All right, now we're going to talk about this little bitty device that was invented in 1840 by this man by the name of Samuel F.B. Morse. You might be familiar with the name Morse because of something called the Morse code. He developed a device in which you connect it to wires, and through a series of pulses and dashes as you're tapping, as I'm tapping like this, you might have seen that in old movies. Each one of those series of dashes is an alphabet letter. It is still being taught in our military system today, so if anyone is captured or if you want to secretly keep people from knowing what you're saying, they use it with the Navy and they use it with other parts of our military through Morse code. This is a telegraph. And there would be another telegraph at the other end of a wire, and you could pulse a message through to somebody else on the other side. Now, people needed to communicate faster to keep up with the industrial growth and faster travel methods. So Samuel Morse developed the telegraph in 1844, and it used the electric signals to send messages along wires. What I have underlined is extremely important. To transmit messages, Morse developed the Morse code, using a series of dots and dashes to represent the letters of the alphabet. By 1852, the United States was operating about 23,000 miles of telegraph lines. The telegraph allowed information to be communicated in minutes and not days, resulting in people staying up to date about important events happening around the country. It allowed businesses to become more efficient in production and shipping. Just to give you an FYI, the president during the war between the attack between Mexico and the Texans in 1856, within a few minutes or a few hours of the attack, the president in Washington, D.C. knew about the attack and was able to declare war to protect Texas borders. Abraham Lincoln he actually would sleep next to the telegraph machine in Washington, D.C. in the White House so he could listen to reports coming in of different battles around the Civil War. And within minutes to hours, he would know the result of a battle, and he would actually send out his own orders to his own commanders about the wars and what they should do, about the battles and what they should do. So, how did the telegraph impact communication in the U.S.? Communication could be transmitted within minutes, and people around the world knew what was happening because of that. Samuel F.B. Morse is your inventor, and he used the Morse code. All right, let's talk about two developers in the agricultural realm too. This is more of the Midwest, not necessarily the northern part. John Deere developed what we call the steel plow, and that's what you see in the ground here. Before, you would either use a type of stone that you would sharpen to an edge, or they would use a type of iron, which was more brittle, or they would use wood. And you couldn't cut very deeply into the ground, and it took a lot longer. So a lot of the soil in the Midwest was not really good like it was in the southeastern part of the nation. So because of his steel plow, even lands that were not considered good for farming could now be plowed deeper and faster for those types of farms. So it made plowing fields faster and more efficient for those small farmers. You didn't necessarily have to have a team of men or a team of horses. One horse, one plow. Another invention in 1831 is the mechanical reaper, as you can see here. These are a series of blades on these sticks, and you could cut your grains a lot faster and more cheaply. So the reaper is extremely important. Later on, you would actually have a place on the reaper where a man could stand up there and he could gather up the grains and tie it off. Of course, it makes cutting wheat and rye and other types of grain faster and more cheaply done. It sped up harvesting wheat, and he designed and constructed it and made a fortune manufacturing and selling the reaper. The reaper harvested grain much faster than a hand-operated sickle, which is a type of curved knife on a stick. Farmers began planting more wheat because they could harvest it a lot faster. Growing wheat became profitable, not only for America, but actually for other parts of the world, because America became the #1 exporter of grains and wheats.